Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Joel Hunter here with Truckee Meadows Community College, here for your video on Islam. And today we're going to be going through the key vocabulary for Islam, as well as our three central questions. That's five fingers. What am I doing? 3 fingers, 3 central ideas in our model to analyze the major world religions. And so you're going to be looking at the human predicament, the doctrines of salvation, and then the supreme good or higher life that we find in Islam. Okay, so we're going to get right to it, and just a reminder, the structure of these videos. We do vocab, and then we do the 3 central questions from the model. And hopefully you found this approach helpful. I put a fair amount of thought into it, and I'm learning as I go and everything. So by all means, drop a comment, if on the video if you have some suggestions or some criticisms or even approval. And that, I would take that too. But I want to get right to the slide deck as we move into that. And of course, I'll let you know what your challenge question is for the quiz this week. All right, let's get right to it then. Okay, beautiful. So we're looking at Islam. This is in your Smith book, pages 221 to 270, and in Novak, The World's Wisdom, pages 281 to 332. All right, as promised, the first thing we're going to do is vocab. First of all, the name of the religion itself, Islam. Define what it means. Define that term. What does it mean? This will tell you a lot about the meaning of the religion itself. Who is Allah? Who is a Semite? Now, you've probably heard this term before as in a negative form, and that is people are referred to as anti-Semites. It'd be helpful to know that who is a Semite? Who is what people group or ethnicity is that referring to? Who or what is the seal of the prophets? And you'll find in Islam a number of honorifics or titles or offices. And I mean, this is not unusual for any of the major religions, but in Islam in particular, there are a number of unique ones. And so this is the first one I'm going to ask you to know, and then I'll mention a few others as well. First of all, my goodness, this is the first location, geographic location I need you to know. Where is Mecca? And like Judaism, Islam is very much not only not only a religion grounded in history, but it is also a religion grounded in geography. And so you need to know where some key locations are because they are important to the religion, the meaning of the religion. So where is Mecca would be the first one. So get your map out, find it. What is the Quran? Now there are other spellings. I'm simply going to use the spelling that Smith uses in the text so that it won't confuse you. But another common spelling is Q-U'-R-A-M. So you'll often see it that way, and I believe that is considered the conventional spelling in academia and journalism today. Okay, who is Muhammed? Where is Yathrib? It's another locale. Where is Medina? By the way, when I ask these where questions, feel free to say, and why, by the way, are these places significant? What is a Hanif? And forgive my pronunciation if I'm getting this wrong. I'm not very good at Arabic, but I'll do my best. What is Hijra? This is an important word here. It's an important concept. What is ghaflah? And that may be ghaflah. I can't remember the stress is on the second syllable or not. What is jihad? A term you've probably heard because it is used a lot in the West, but what we're interested in here is the religious/spiritual meaning of the term jihad. It has a general term, a general meaning, and that's the one that's going to be important for our purposes. What is the night of power? You could also ask this question or answer this question as, when was the night of power? What is the night journey to heaven? Where is Mount Hira? What is the standing miracle? And by the way, I'll just make an aside here. Islam does not, as a general rule, does not emphasize, it's, how to put it, its authenticity does not hinge on a number of miracles. It's not that they're not important, but it's that there's one miracle that stands head and shoulders above all other miracles. And so a way that this is described in your text and by Islam is the standing miracle. What is a surah? What, and maybe when, is the day of judgment? Past, present, or future? What is an infidel? When is Ramadan? What is the Shahada? And this is one I really need you to know, and you're going to want to spend some time understanding this concept, these 5 pillars. What are the 5 pillars? Because they are going to be the main way in which you understand the 3 central questions of Islam when it comes to the human predicament and salvation and the supreme good. I'll say more about that in a bit. What is hadith? What is hajj? What is the Kaaba? And you might, I don't want to give it away. I was going to say where, but what is the Kaaba? Because the what question is actually more interesting than the where. Who are Sunni? Who are Shi'ite or Shia? I believe Smith uses Shi'ite, although I think it's more common and conventional today to use the term Shia. Who are Sufi? So now I've mentioned 3 groups and 3 groups of individuals, and so you might as well figure out then, well, how are they related to one another? What are their similarities? What are their differences? How did they originate? Is another important question. What is ma'rifah? What is ma'rifah? And lastly, what is fana? Or fana. I think it's fana. What is fana? Alrighty, then let's move right into part 2 of the video and talk about the human predicament. What Islam says about our diagnosis, what state we're naturally in, what is our prognosis, what captivates us, what imprisons us. Okay, and a number of these questions are going to be historically related. So they're going to be part of that, part of your text that deals with the historical narrative that Smith describes, the origination and founding and development of Islam as a movement in a particular geographical area at a particular time in world history. And so to understand the human predicament, from Islam, in Islam, you do need to understand how it's connected to that history. And so a lot of these questions are going to be related to that historical part. So how did early Muslims view the world of Arabia at the time Muhammad lived? What is shirk, and what is its significance for understanding the human predicament? Shirk I didn't even put on your vocabulary list, but I probably should have, because this is that concept is really central to understanding what Islam teaches about the human predicament. What are the approximate years of Muhammad's birth and death? How did Meccans react to Muhammad's message? And the Quran, how they react to the Quran? And why did they react this way? So really, just to give a little aside here, is a really interesting way to parallel the reaction of the Prophet's teaching and the delivery of the text with the other Abrahamic phase, Judaism and Christianity, and how their prophets in Judaism, how its prophets were received by, let's call it the establishment, or by the status quo. And then considering Jesus as a prophet, as one of his offices, which Islam recognizes him as a prophet, how was his message received by the religious and political authorities and people of his time? And in I think each case, in each tradition, it's not a simple answer, because on the one hand you have the message embraced by a number of people, but then it seems that those with power reject it. Okay, so let's take a look at how Meccans react then in this case, in Islam's case, to Muhammad's message and the Quran. What are the defects of the Old and New Testaments according to Islam? So there is a claim by Muslims that the canonical texts of the call them the mother religions, Judaism and Christianity, that their canonical texts are somehow defective. So what are those defects according to Islam? How does Islam characterize the human self? Okay, so here's the anthropological question, which I always like to ask. Compare Islamic human anthropology with Judaism's. And the comparison, might be mostly similarities, but then there might be some important differences too. So have a look at those. All right, let's move on to part 3, which is the question of salvation. What is the cure to our illness, according to Islam? All right, this was one of the candidates for your challenge question, but it is not your challenge question, but it's a good one. Explain how Islam is this is a quote from the Smith text, how Islam is a complex of religion, culture, and geography that differs in belief and aims from the other Abrahamic religions. What are Islam's objections to Judaism? What are its objections to Christianity? So the kinship is established in your reading, and some discussion of that, the kinship of all three of these religions. And so it's always interesting to look at, on what basis then, given that kinship, is there a difference that from which or out of which grows an entirely new major world religion. Characterize the growth of Islam from its founding in the 6th century Common Era, over the subsequent 100 years. Okay, so you're looking from the 500s through the 600s, in other words. Characterize the growth of Islam during that period. According to Islam, how did the Quran come into earthly material existence? Now there's a loaded question for you, because according to Islam, the Quran is not originally an earthly material product. Okay? So you need to understand how Islam views the Quran, its origin, and then how it comes to be in the form of a written text. Okay, now this is your challenge question. So this is where you can take some notes and get yourself ready to answer this question for your quiz on Islam. How does the Quran differ from all other canonical religious texts? And I don't just mean within Islam, but I mean within any of the religions we've studied, but in particular, Judaism and Christianity. All right, so you can't just answer this by looking back at the objections question. You need to look also at the nature of this text of the Quran, according to Islam. And what is it that makes it so different than the other texts, the other canonical texts? In other words, canon means rule, okay? So it means a measure, like a measuring stick. So a canonical text means a text by which you measure the teachings and the practices of those who claim to be an adherent of religion. Okay, so, and it's also the basis for the teachings and the practices. All right, so the claim here is that the Quran differs in not only in degree, but in kind from the other canonical religious texts. And so I need you to then prepare an answer for this question, and I'm going to ask you to answer this on your Islam quiz. All right. What is the uncreated Quran, and why is it important? Okay, now explain this contrast. This is a quote from your Smith text. Whereas the Hebrew Bible and Christian New Testament are directly historical and indirectly doctrinal, the Quran is directly doctrinal and indirectly historical. Okay, what is the significance of this difference? All right, so that's going to take a little unpacking. You're going to come across this in your text, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. Hit the pause button, and then back up, and then just take it one chunk at a time. Okay, what does it mean for the Jewish and Christian scriptures to be directly historical? What does that mean? And indirectly doctrinal. Okay, and then vice versa for the Quran. All right, take your time with that one. By the way, this will help you on the challenge question. Compare Islam's understanding of God's nature with that of Judaism and Christianity. What is similar? What is different? Which similarity or difference is the most significant? Okay. Identify and explain the 5 pillars of Islam. If you want to understand what Islam has to say about salvation, about the quest to escape or to solve the human predicament and to attain a higher life, to attain the supreme good that humans can have, you must understand what the 5 pillars are. That is central to their beliefs and practices about salvation. And I think this might be the last question in this set. Explain how the social teachings of Islam affect political, economic, and cultural life. It's not the last question section. I have a question about Sufism. Okay, so Smith breaks out Sufism, as I recall, into his own little section. What is Sufism, and which of its doctrines are distinct from the other major sects of Islam? You might also think about what's significant about those differences. By the way, your Novak text, the readings from the Islamic texts And especially in the Grace Note section, he's got some really nice selections of Sufi poets and Sufi teachers. So if you really, actually, to understand what Sufism is, probably the Novak readings will help you quite a bit. If you like poetry, especially if you like poetry. Okay, and lastly, and very briefly, is the ultimate end or highest good. I'm not going to have much to say about this because as I've already indicated in the previous one, previous section at least, if you understand the 5 pillars, you really get a complete picture of Islam, particularly on the final 2 questions of the model, what salvation is and what the ultimate end or highest good is. So, I mean, I'll just say that as start there, okay? But in addition to the 5 pillars, you should also be able to answer these questions. Explain the day of judgment and the afterlife that follows. Now, if you think back to our Judaism and Christianity readings, the afterlife did not figure very prominently. And that's because really it doesn't figure that prominently within the teachings. Now, more so in Christianity than in Judaism. But both of those really pale, afterlife in those 2 pales in comparison to Islam. So have a look at what the Day of Judgment is and the afterlife that follows. By the way, the Day of Judgment, that is common to all 3 Abrahamic faiths. And so it's interesting to see what that means in each of the 3 faiths. And then I'm not going to say how the afterlife is part of that because it may not necessarily be in all 3, but or at least not in the same way. But in Islam, these two are closely connected. So yeah, have a look at that. How does Sufi belief about our highest good or higher life compare with traditional, and I put that in scare quotes, Muslim belief? Sufism has a complicated existence within Islam, or at least in most regions where Islam is prominent. It's accepted or embraced even in some places, and not so much in others. And so the population of Sufi believers is quite variable. And so there's, in some places, there's a good bit of tension between Sufi and what I'm calling here traditional Muslims. Okay, so have a look at maybe why there might be that tension, and then compare in particular what Sufis teach about our highest good or the higher life. Okay? Very good. And I do believe that's it. Yep, that's it. So it's a shorter slide deck, probably actually more vocab than any of our other religions. So hence the video this time not quite as long. But again, I gave you your challenge question, and yeah, so good luck on your Islam quiz, and I will see you next time. And by all means, get in contact with me if you have any questions. Again, Dr. Joel Hunter, Truckee Meadows Community College. I'll see you later.